So we're back. Part 2 of my A-26K or B-26K, depending on how you want to call it, time-lapse build. I'm filming this just a few seconds after I filmed the wrap-up from part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, link up in the top corner there. You can see how I got to this stage of the build. And as you can see here, it is assembled, it is primed, and it is ready to go for the next steps. And the next steps specifically, and we paint black bottoms, the Vietnam era camouflage on top, and then flat coat, weathering, decals, flat coat, weathering, and then gear and all the other fun stuff, bomb doors, weapons, all the other stuff I need to make this, finish this off and make it a complete model. So it's coming together really well. Very excited to have this, especially with all three of them together. It'll be amazing. So on that note, let's get right into it, and we'll continue on with part 2 of my A-26 Counter Invader time-lapse. So the first step of this process here is just getting the engines ready to go. I needed to build up the engines, to build up the cowl flaps and whatnot in order to get all of the camo lines lined up for the painting. So I'm going ahead and getting those painted up and assembled and weathered and whatnot. As you can see, it does take quite a while to get these engines put together. The detail level on these things are amazing, and as you'll see, I actually I built it in a way that I can display it with the cowlings on or off. The fit and the detail is that good. So yeah, very, very happy with the way ICM built these things up. These could almost be sold as a standalone aftermarket engine for different models. They're so well detailed. So here I start fitting the cowl flaps to the back of the engine. The actual build sequence wants you to glue the engine to the airframe and to the nacelle, and then install the cowl flaps once the engine's installed. Because I am the way I'm building it in the assembly pattern with the camo, it was easier for me to attach the cowl flaps to the engines when they're off like this, and then paint the camouflage and then glue the engines on at a later date. That allowed me to get a really good exhaust stain painted, which you'll see later on. As the exhaust would come from underneath the cowl flaps, it was easier to do that before the cowl flaps were installed on the airframe. So it's an order of operations. You just have to modify the build sequence based off of how you want to finish off your aircraft. So it made work a little bit more difficult for me in order of getting everything lined up. But at the end, I think it looks a lot better for the extra effort.
As you can see here, I got the first color down, the tan. I'm now kind of covering some of the tan in order to paint down the first green. And then as you'll see, I use the little kind of blue tack sausages in order to get a good camo demarcation between the different colors. If you want to see some in-depth coverage on how I do that, I'll put a link up above showing you how there's my tips and tricks video basically on how to do camo painting. I go into a bit more detail on how that works, but you'll see I just strategically work my way across and paint and use the putty worms as needed to make sure I get the colors painted. So you'll see here, painting the first two colors wasn't, too difficult. Once you get to the third color, second green, but the third overall color, it ends up being a lot more difficult because every single application of paint requires you to do little worms in the masking in order to cover the existing paint. So just that last color always takes a lot more effort and time to get it done, but you got to plug through and make sure you do it right for the camo to look good. If you cut corners, it'll notice the paint job is your final layer and what everyone sees. So you got to make sure you take the effort to do it properly. Now, my only complaint with the colors, I did use the Vallejo Model Air, and I went right off of their color callouts for the Vietnam era scheme. My only real complaint looking at this, the tan is a little too light, and the two color greens, they're just too close. That dark green should have been a lot darker. I mean, it is what it is. It does come across having a good, as you'll see at the end, it looks a lot like a good weathered, heavy use aircraft, not a fresh factory one. But I kind of wish that the greens at least had a little bit more of a contrast between them. Once I get the final top layer done, I work my way across the bottom in sections. It'd be very difficult to mask all the camo with the proper kind of worm soft camo lines and get this entire airframe painted in one shot. So you'll see I kind of work my way across in stages. I'll do the wingtip in a little bit, and then I'll stop, and then I'll mask off the nacelle, and I'll paint that, then I'll stop, then I'll do the inside wings, and I just work my way around the plane, kind of breaking it up into little chunks. And it minimizes my masking, and it minimizes the chances of me forgetting something. If I try to mask this entire thing in one shot and paint it, it's very easy for me to miss a corner or not mask something and ruin the paint job I've already done and just make a lot more work for myself. So take it up in little chunks, little bites at one, at a time, and work your way around. Check your references, make sure you're not missing anything. then once I get all the paint completed and I got all the, I pulled the masks out of the Bombay and the wheel wells because I wasn't too worried about overspray. Obviously, I left the masking on the windows as I still have to do a final weathering coat and whatnot. You don't want to ruin the clear. But that's all done. And here you can see I'm starting to apply the clear gloss for the decals. It's literally just future floor polish. I brush it on. It self-levels for the most part. I've been using it for years and it's great. If I ever run into a situation where I can't find the product or whatnot, I'll look into something different. But right now, I find this is the easiest prep for decals. And then here I start the decal process. I'm using straight out of the kit decals. They go down amazing. First time using ICM, actually, well, not the first time. First time in a long time I've used ICM decals. The other ones were many years ago and they weren't the greatest, but this current iteration of ICM decals are great. They go down with no issues. Solver set settled them quite nicely. They go into all the panel lines, no issues at all. My only real complaint is just the aircraft itself. There's not a lot of decals on these aircraft. They were stripped of national markings as they were bombing countries that they shouldn't have been bombing. So the U.S. stripped it down of all real U.S. markings and flew them kind of as a clandestine bomber. So not a lot to go down with the decals, but they doesn't affect the product. The quality of the decals is amazing, and they went down super easy. So once the decals are complete, I do another quick coat of Future just over top of the decals. I don't do the entire airframe. I just go over the decals I applied. That's just a good sealant layer to ensure that no weathering causes the decals to lift. You use water to apply the decals. If you use a water-based weathering, you can pop the decal again. So another coat of Future seals those down, make sure the decals don't move around and slide, and then I can go ahead and do the weathering. You'll see I do an overall black wash, which I wipe off, and then I kind of play that game of slowly, as I work, taking a little bit more off or adding a little bit more as I need to. You can with that Future layer, the upper weathering doesn't interact with the underneath paint, so you can apply, take off, add as needed, so it makes life a lot easier. So here I'm starting to get the exhausts prepped for paint. It was time to get those exhausts glued on and get the engine nacelles finally assembled with the rest of the fuselage. You'll also see here I get the wheels ready. I'm using the aftermarket resin wheels just to create the more accurate main gear. I did do a review on those wheels. If you'd like to take a look at that, I'll put the link up top. You can take a look at the difference between the kit wheels and kind of what these aftermarkets look like. So they definitely need an aftermarket wheel in order to make this kit look good. The kit wheels are absolute junk, and I go into detail on that in that video. So if you want more, take a look at that. But you'll see I get those wheels cut off. I get the hubs painted in steel, and then I paint the wheel in the Vallejo tire black. And meanwhile, while all of that was happening in the background, I was painting those exhaust stacks in Alclad. I did Alclad stainless steel, and then I hit that with a little bit of the Alclad. I believe I used exhaust manifold. It's a bit of a burnt metal look. Give it that look that I wanted, and then I hit it with a gloss coat to get a shine. And then you'll also see here I start pulling the maskings off the canopy as I've got the final flat coat has been done on the airframe. The Vallejo flat coat that I use, it's not quite dead flat. It's flatter than a semi-gloss, but it still has a little bit of gloss to it. And that's just the nature of how it is, but it doesn't look bad. And you'll see also the weathering is all completed. I've got the exhaust staining done. I did a little bit of weathering around the walkways and whatnot, and the guns on the nose and everything else. So all of that little stuff has all been taken care of. And then, like I said, I get that flat coat down, and then I start pulling masks. So here I start the process of actually assembling and installing the exhaust stacks. Every exhaust stack is a separate piece. And just what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just taking a quick look at the instructions. There's 9 separate pieces per aircraft, which makes sense. It's a 9-row radial, and each exhaust stack does 2 cylinders. So it's an 18-cylinder twin row, 9 cylinders per row, so 9 exhausts. Each exhaust feeds 2 cylinders. So 9 exhausts per engine. There's 18 total. There are some specific ones for specific locations. So you really got to pay attention to the instructions and your orientation. You'll also notice there's that little gray ring, and it's an alignment tool. So you'll see where I glue on an exhaust stack, and then I use that alignment tool to hold it in place, make sure it's in the right orientation, and then I work my way around, and I do it in a couple of different runs to make sure that they don't move and I'm not fighting it. So I put a couple on, put the alignment tool on, let them dry, put the rest of them on, put the alignment tool in, let them dry, and I work my way through. So again, I don't get myself stuck into a corner where I'm fighting multiple things at once. It's a really smart idea how they did it, and for the little bit of cost of that one little tool, it makes life so much easier as the builder to get it all assembled. So really, compliments to ICM for having such an amazing system to get these exhaust stacks, and they look great. So here I start gluing on the engines, the completed engine. You'll see I don't have the cowlings installed, as I do have the ability to remove those. It's a nice press fit, so when you press them on, it looks like they're mounted. It's easy to just pop the prop off, pop the cowling off, put the prop back on, and you have an exposed engine. Again, amazing compliments to the engineering of ICM that it's just a press fit. It doesn't even say in the instructions that that's an option, but it is. So they did really, really good job engineering the kit. And then I'll start working here on the antennas and all the fiddly bits. I start working my way around the airframe, installing all of those. And then I'll go through and hand paint all of those antennas as we go down the road versus having them all installed kind of before the painting process, which is what the kit wants you to do. Hence why I mentioned before, make sure you check your instructions and come up with a build order that works for your style of building. I'm very prone to knocking antennas off, so I tend to paint everything, install the antennas, and then go back and paint them by hand after the fact, and it limits the chances of me losing these things. That being said, I did lose the pitot tube off of one of these A-26s, so, you know, it is what it is. So once I get that stuff all installed and painted, you'll see I start working on the weapons. This is the ICM Vietnam-era weapons kit. It's a separate kit you can purchase, but it was included in this kit. So you'll see I go ahead and inside the instructions for the aircraft, there's a call out for different loadouts, different potential loads that these aircraft would have carried. So I followed that for the most part, came up with a loadout that I liked, started assembling that, and then went ahead and worked on the weapons. So these triple injector racks took quite a bit of work to get assembled. I mean, they're beautiful. It's just every little kind of mounting bracket is a separate piece. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 12 per ejector rack. So with 2 ejector racks, there's 24 of these little tiny pieces you have to glue on. So it took a bit of mental fortitude to just sit down and go through them all and get them all installed. But once you get that done and painted, they look great. The other thing you might notice, if you have built this kit or been paying attention to the instructions, there's no note about anything in the bomb bay. Now, looking up on research online, it sounds like a lot of these counter invaders either carried an extra fuel tank in the bomb bay or carried flares. And as you'll see, I mount the flares to the triple ejector rack on the outer wing, and it doesn't come with a fuel tank, and I couldn't really find any references to what the bomb bay fuel tank looked like on an A-26, and even if I could, I did not have the interest in scratch building anything. So I took the shortcut and I just installed a Mark 82 or 2 Mark 82s with the fins, the snake eyes, the Mark 82 snake eye. I did those up and I stuck one on each bomb rack, so just to busy up the bomb bay a little bit. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but you know, I feel like it makes it look a bit more interesting, and it was a lot less work than trying to make something from scratch. here at the finishing touches, I'm just painting the nav lights, whatnot. It's the standard way I paint these nav lights. It's the same I've done in pretty much every kit. I just paint chrome on the location where the light would be, and then I use clear paint. Right now I'm using Tamiya clear. Both of those colors are starting to hit the end of their life. They're starting to thicken up, so I'll have to try to source and see if there's any other clear paints out there. But yeah, I paint the light, where would be the light area, chrome, and then I paint either clear red or clear green on the top of that. And at the end of the day, it looks like a clear lens with the light in the background. So it actually looks really realistic as a cheap way of doing it. I mean, you could go the real route of cutting it out and putting in clear sprue and all that other nonsense, but I find this is just a quick and easy way to make it look like it's got a light, but not actually going through the actual effort of doing it. So there's that. There's a bit of final weathering on the weapons. I didn't really do too much on the weapons. There's decals and stuff that should have been installed that I didn't do. You're not really going to notice it, so I just dirtied them up a little bit, and then I went ahead and finished it up. And then you'll see here at the end, there's a couple of quick shots from the finish photo shoot I did, and they look really good. My only complaint, I have dust all in the inside of the canopies, and I have no idea how it got there, and I have no way of getting it out, so I just have to live with it. But either way, that is my ICM 148 scale A-26K. So thank you everybody for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please down below let me know. Facebook, message me, whatever you want to do. By all means, I can answer questions on the build, or if there's anything you want to bring up and you think I did wrong, please let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.